Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Midnight News with me, Mariam Zian, and here are your top stories for tonight. In the ongoing war on Gaza, 60 Palestinians were killed in 5 Zionist massacres, while 280 others were injured. NATO reviews its commitment to help Ukraine in what it calls its right to defend itself as US authorizes strikes on Russian targets, while Moscow warns of a comprehensive war. Also coming up, former US President Donald Trump vows to appeal his guilty verdict a day after a jury of New York convicted him of 34 felony counts. Welcome back to the program. Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza announced on Friday that the number of victims of the ongoing Zionist aggression on the Gaza Strip since October 7 has risen to 36,284 martyrs, in addition to 82,057 injured. Health authorities in Gaza added that the occupation committed 5 massacres against families in the enclave during the past 24 hours, killing 60 and leaving 280 others injured. The head of the government media office in Gaza, Salama Ma'rouf, stated that horrific crimes committed by the occupation in northern Gaza, particularly in Jabalia and the Beit Lahia project, expose its fascism and racism. He noted that dozens of martyrs' bodies were recovered after the invasion and withdrawal of the occupation forces from these areas.
The videos and photos that emerged from Jabalia camp after the occupation army withdrew show the ugliness of the atrocities and crimes committed, especially in Jabalia camp and the Beit Lahia project. This once again reveals the fascism and racism of this occupation, its blatant degradation of the most basic principles of humanity, and its violation of international solutions and rulings, particularly those issued by the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. Ambulance and civil defense teams recovered dozens of martyrs throughout the invasion and after the withdrawal, and the search is currently continuing for dozens of missing people.
The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, said on Friday that it received horrific reports from its premises in the Jabalia refugee camp, the northern Gaza Strip, during the Zionist military offensive in the camp. UNRWA said that displaced people, including children who were sheltering in its schools in Jabalia, were killed and injured by the occupation army. The Palestinian factions said that they are closely following the heinous crimes against the northern Gaza Strip. The follow-up committee for the Palestinian factions confirmed in a statement that the occupation has ignored all international laws, conventions, and standards, as well as the decisions of the International Court of Justice. The Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor reported that during its military operation in the Jabalia camp in northern Gaza, the occupation army has systematically pursued forced displacement of Palestinian civilians by destroying essential infrastructure and homes. Since May 11, the occupation launched a large-scale military operation in the Jabalia camp, following forced displacement orders against tens of thousands of residents and the establishment of fire belts around residential neighborhoods and civilian structures.
The occupation is continuing the crime of forced displacement by destroying the remaining residential neighborhoods and international shelter centers in the Jabalia camp in the northern Gaza Strip. Not a single residential building was spared from bombing, bulldozing, or burning the Jabalia camp, with the complete destruction of the infrastructure and the burning of the main market and shops in the surrounding streets, which represents a clear pattern repeated in all areas of the Gaza Strip, with the aim of entrenching the crime of forced displacement.
The Israeli occupation army withdrew from northern Gaza on Friday after 20 days of operations, leaving widespread destruction in the Jabalia camp and the Beit Lahya project. Despite their efforts, they failed to eliminate the Palestinian resistance, which inflicted significant losses. Hussein Barkan has more details.
After withdrawing from northern Gaza, the Israeli occupation army admitted the widespread destruction without significant gains against the Palestinian resistance. Over 1,000 homes, residential blocks, water wells, and schools were destroyed during the operation, according to Gaza Civil Defense Service.
The occupier failed to achieve any military or political success. It underscores the resounding defeat suffered by this aggressor at the hand of the Palestinian resistance in northern Gaza's Jabalia camp. It's evident they won't be able to maintain control for long.
Despite attempting to reorganize and reassess, the occupation forces face significant resistance, with specific operations targeting their soldiers and vehicles. The army acknowledged the deaths of 2 soldiers and injuries to others, underscoring their battlefield confusion.
These actions clearly showcase the failure of Netanyahu's political and military strategies. This failure extends to his generals and soldiers, with thousands or even tens of thousands now reportedly seeking treatment or citing psychological issues as reasons to avoid combat.
A high-ranking officer revealed a prevailing sense of failure among his peers, many of whom are reluctant to continue their service. An internal poll published by Edut Ahranut showed only 42% of officers willing to stay in Gaza. Political fractures within the Israeli government are also evident, with expectations that Benny Gantz and his party may withdraw from Netanyahu's government before June 8th.
The Al-Qassam Brigade, the military wing of the Hamas movement, published an audio message from the Zionist detainees. Let's take a listen.
שלום, אני אסירה בשבי חמאס. אני נמצאת בשבי כבר יותר מ-237 יום ואני לא יודעת עד מתי אני אשאר פה. אני פונה לעם ישראל, תצילו אותנו. אתם תומכים בממשלת נתניהו, גלנט וגנץ. אתם תשאירו אותנו פה ותסיימו את גורלנו ואת גורל חבריי. חבריי שבויים כמו רון ארד. תצאו לרחובות. תצאו להפגין, גברים ונשים, תסגרו את רחובות תל אביב ואל תחזרו הביתה עד שאנחנו לא נחזור. בבקשה, אל תיתנו לנתניהו ולממשלה להרוג אותנו, תצילו אותנו, תצילו אותנו, תצילו אותנו. הזמן עוזר, הזמן עוזר, העם צריך להחליט, אנחנו לא רוצים למות פה, אנחנו לא רוצים למות פה, אנחנו לא רוצים למות פה. תצילו אותנו, תצילו אותנו, הזמן עוזר. אנחנו לא רוצים למות פה. אנחנו לא רוצים למות פה.
The Al-Qassam Brigades also published video clips showing how they targeted occupation soldiers and vehicles and shelling gatherings with mortar shells in the southern Gaza Strip.
وقع.
Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ahmed Attaf discussed with his Iranian counterpart Ali Bagheri the serious developments occurring in Gaza due to the Israeli occupation's brutal aggression against Palestinian civilians in the city of Rafah in particular. A statement by the Algerian Foreign Ministry clarified that Minister Attaf received a phone call from Ali Bagheri during which they exchanged views on intensifying diplomatic pressures to mobilize the international community in support of the Palestinian people. US President Joe Biden announced a new proposal to stop the war in Gaza that includes 3 stages, saying that it is time to end the war. Biden said in a press conference at the White House that the first phase will last for 6 weeks and includes a comprehensive ceasefire and withdrawal of occupation forces from residential areas in Gaza. Biden added that during the first phase, the occupation will negotiate with Hamas to reach the second phase, which will witness the permanent end of the war. And in the third phase, Biden added that a comprehensive reconstruction plan for Gaza will be implemented, aiming to rebuild infrastructure and improve the living conditions of the population in Gaza. Moving on to different developments now, the U.S. Central Command announced that U.S. and British forces conducted airstrikes on Thursday night, targeting 13 Houthi positions in the Hodeidah Governorate. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak stated that this was the 5th series of strikes aimed at deterring the Houthis from disrupting navigation in the Red Sea. The raids have resulted in casualties, though the exact number of killed and wounded remains unconfirmed. And the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, renewed Algeria's commitment to supporting just causes in the world, for most of which is the Palestinian cause, which considers the issue of all Algerians, and Western Sahara, which is considered the last colony in Africa. President Tebboune said during his meeting with representatives of the civil society in the province of Khenchla in eastern Algeria that the United Nations must find a solution to the Sahrawi issue and enable the Sahrawi people to their right to self-determination. The head of state also stated that Algeria had sent a call to all honorable and free people in the world to go to condemn through the International Court of Justice the Zionist entity, stressing in this context that Algeria will continue its efforts to defend the Palestinian issue.
الصحراء الغربية آخر مستعمرة في إفريقيا، ولازم نوصل مع الأمم المتحدة إلى تقرير المصير. خليهم يقرروا مصيرهم واش حبوا يكونوا، ويكونوا اللي حبوا هما باش يكونوا، ولا واحد يفرض عليهم. بالنسبة لفلسطين، فلسطين هي قضيتنا، ما نزايدوا حتى على واحد. ولكن الجزائري بمجرد ما يبدأ ينطق بفلسطين. بس تعلم يتكلم، أول كلمة نتاعها هي فلسطين. فلسطين قضية مقدسة، ولا جزائري ينسى مهما كان التفكير نتاع الأشقاء ولا ناس آخرين. أنا ما ننساش باللي هي أولى القبلتين. احنا نادينا كل الشرفاء في العالم، كل الحقوقيين في العالم باش يتوجهوا للمحكمة الدولية، وتوجهوا وحكمنا عليهم ونزيد نحكم عليهم.
And during his official trip to China, on behalf of President Abdelmajid Tebboune, Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ahmed Attaf held discussions on Friday in Beijing with the Secretary General of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Zhang Ming. The meeting aimed to explore avenues for establishing and enhancing institutional relations between Algeria and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. In the same context, during his official trip to China, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf held talks with Chinese Vice Minister of Finance Li Yunze. The discussion centered around monitoring the progress of agreements reached during President Tebboune's visit to China last year, with a particular emphasis on enhancing financial cooperation between the two nations. Algeria urged for the resumption of efforts towards a political resolution to the Syrian crisis and the removal of sanctions imposed on the country. Speaking on behalf of African nations in the Security Council, Algeria's UN envoy Ammar Ben Jama emphasized the need for all involved parties to engage constructively in finding a political solution that preserves Syria's unity, territorial integrity, and sovereignty. He highlighted the potential repercussions on stability and peace in Syria and a wider region due to escalating tensions and missteps in the Gaza conflict.
Indicators. After more than 13 years of crisis, the humanitarian needs of Syria and the Syrian people are constantly growing due to the conflict, due to economic recession, and due to unilateral sanctions imposed on Syria. The A3+ calls upon all parties to constructively engage in finding a political solution to guarantee Syria's unity, Syria's territorial integrity, Syria's sovereignty. The A3+ is seriously concerned about escalation and miscalculation from the Gaza conflict and the impacts it could have on the stability and peace of Syria and the region as a whole.
After counting more than 89% of the votes in South Africa's general elections, the ruling African National Congress is in the lead. However, it is falling short of the majority. The Democratic Alliance sits second, while former President Zuma's MK party is currently third. John Steenhuisen, chairman of the Democratic Alliance Party, for his part expressed that the DA would lean to what he labeled as the Moli Party charter for a coalition if the party does not win the majority, while the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, Namvula Mokonyane, affirmed that negotiating a coalition is no game for the party, explaining that leaders of the party will wait for the final results to discuss what the next steps will look like.
Well, we're in a group of parties called the Multi-Party Charter, which is 11 parties that have signed a pre-election coalition agreement pact that we will form a government if we get the majority. If we don't, we'll obviously have to meet as the Multi-Party Charter parties and decide on what the next best thing for us to do, and can we bring other parties in to help us get over the 50% mark? What are the various political variations that might be able to take place in provinces? Can the Multi-Party Charter form governments in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, other provinces? If not, what are the options that lie there? But our first port of call would be to meet with those leaders and to talk to them about what we do to take the next step.
We don't toy. We don't toy around. We reflect on what is good for the country, as well as respecting the will of the voters. And that's why we went into these elections with a full intention of absolute victory for the ANC.
The United States and Germany have given Ukraine their backing to use Western-made missiles for strikes inside Russia. In a war that continues to escalate, it's a policy shift that crosses another red line. More details with Marwa Belaywer.
The West has agonized over whether to grant Kiev's latest request, which is using US weapons to strike targets inside Russia, fearing escalation and a potential Russian response. However, what seemed beyond the pale 1 week had become banal the next. An approval from the Biden administration on Thursday came after days of growing pressure on Biden from Western allies and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Russia, on the other hand, has accused the West of provoking a new level of tension. Biden's decision to allow Kiev to use US weapons marked an important shift in US politics, after warnings from Moscow that the move could trigger a global conflict.
That went right to the president, and as you've heard, he's approved the use of our weapons for that purpose. Going forward, we'll continue to do what we've been doing, which is, as necessary, adapt and adjust. And that, as I said, has been a hallmark of our engagement. It will continue to be.
Several countries, such as Belgium and Italy, said they were not ready to let Ukraine use their weapons to hit targets inside Russia, citing the risks, which can be hard to anticipate. Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian president and current deputy chair of the country's Security Council, called Biden's decision a serious escalation of the conflict.
It would be a crucial mistake on the part of the West to believe that Russia was not ready to use tactical nuclear weapons against Ukraine. It's not an attempt to scare or any sort of nuclear bluff.
Russia had warned several times Ukraine and its Western allies not to cross its red line. In both cases, Ukraine and its Western allies ignored the warning. Analysts suggest that this move by the USA will not stop but complicate Russian military operations against Ukraine.
Donald Trump, the former U.S. president and presumptive 2024 Republican nominee, was convicted on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Donald Trump confirmed he will appeal against his historic conviction in his New York trial and remarks at Trump Tower. Nabil Khazini has more details.
The morning following his conviction on all the 34 counts, Donald Trump was appearing on all the headlines across the United States. How not when Trump is the first former or serving president in the United States who has been found guilty of a crime. Outside Trump Tower, his supporters were enraged by the historic guilty verdict against the former Republican president.
What we saw yesterday was criminal. It's just a big revelation to awaken more of the public. That's all it is. They think they're doing, something to Trump and sticking it to him. They're going to try at every angle that they can to interfere with this election by trying to indict him any way they can. But he's going to hold up that big, beautiful newspaper one time again that says acquitted, and another one that says president of 2024.
In the meantime, inside the tower, Trump was defending himself.
As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances.
Trump is not above the law.
Anger was also manifested outside in Manhattan, where protesters seemed to be waiting for this moment.
But the average American is going to realize that their fathers, their mothers, sisters who get a felony cannot vote, but yet a felon can run America and run the judicial system.
His rival, Joe Biden, immediately commented on that and described his opponent as a threat to democracy.
The American principle that no one is above the law was reaffirmed. Donald Trump was given every opportunity to defend himself. It was a state case, not a federal case, and it was heard by a jury of 12 citizens.
After Trump's conviction, the question is whether the US voters' position on the former president will change or not. Until then, Trump can still run for president. He could be sent to prison when he is sentenced on July 11th, but legal experts say a fine is more likely.
Ladies and gents, that was it for tonight's program. Thank you for following and see you in the next edition.